Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Girls' Night Out, the Illuminating Women opportunity where women get together to encourage each other. We get an opportunity to be educated and just be illuminated from the inside out. And my name is Sharon Hockenbury, and I'm here not as a presenter. I'm here as a soul sister on a journey with you, and I want to be able to share my experiences and in the hope that it will encourage you to step in the fullness of who you were designed to be. And I would love to introduce you to Dr. Lagitha, who I have gotten the privilege of spending some time with over the phone this week, getting to know her deeper. And I know we're soul sisters, and she is a beautiful woman and also here just to give of herself. And I'll let her continue on with her introduction.
Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, Jill, for inviting us to do this tonight. We are really happy to be able to share with you a little more deeply about the divine feminine. We want to have this be a rather kind of casual conversation between the two of us. So I will be bringing forward some topics that some of us have already had a chance to talk to earlier this evening, which has been a really rich conversation. So I thank all of you for that too. And we may even at some point invite all of you to say a word or two about the topic that we are going to be sharing about. Some of this is going to be a little repetitious. We were talking initially about having reflections about what we all think are sort of attributes or how we think of the divine feminine. So let me just go back for a second because this conversation this evening was really inspired by this time of COVID pandemic and the book by Matthew Fox about the mystic Julian of Norwich, who lived and wrote a book when women didn't usually write books at all, and had visions and inspirations during the time of the Black Plague. And there are things that she shared that we can learn from today. And we're bringing some of those themes into our conversation today. So just to repeat a little bit about who she was, she learned and joined what they think was the Benedictine order in her day. But instead of joining a convent, she was what they called, what was the name of that? She was basically isolated in a cell that was attached to the church, and it had a window to the street, but it also had a window. So when there was a church service going on, she could see that as well. But when people did this, they were committed to never leave this particular cell. So she committed to live her entire life never leaving this cell. She had a couple people who served her. They brought her food, helped her with whatever she needed, but she lived in this little cell for the rest of her life. But she lived it with joy, and she lived it in deep connection with spirit, and she lived it with great insight and also with service, because that window that she had was open to the street, and people who passed by would talk to her and get spiritual direction. So it wasn't like she was completely never talking to anyone. She actually was serving people who would walk by. So she can be an inspiration to us as a woman who was raised knowing and educated, knowing what the church taught, but she chose to learn more about what she knew to be the true divine feminine in connection to spirit. So she was not depending on scripture. She was not depending on the pastor to teach her what was true. She was downloading it from spirit directly. Mm-hmm. And many of the teachings, her book was not long, but she had basically 16 teachings that she had in this book. at the time she wrote the book, it was like mid 1300s or late, I think maybe 1370. And there was no printing press, so there were a few copies that were handwritten of this book. That's all there were. And then finally, when there were presses and whatever, about 1700, I think it was, that her book was printed. So it lives on. We are still here talking about her because she wrote that. And I just want to offer thanks to her for what she has given us to look back at. And one of the things I believe she's giving us is kind of giving us our power back to not be told who we are, but to look within to see who we are as divine feminine women. So I just wanted to sort of set the stage with that, like give honor to her, and also to bring in the memories of the mothers, the women who stood behind each one of us.
Mhm.
We are all here because probably some women who experienced, yes, ownership and some challenging things, but we also probably all have in our lineage and in our DNA um, memories of women who were healers. And we have some of those powers too. Women who were wise, women who had gifts that they were allowed to express. So we are now here in this time, in this day. We've all been through a challenging year plus. There's no one who has been untouched. Absolutely no one has been untouched by what's going on in the world right now. And yet we always, in a time like this, or even in a small time of challenge in our lives, we always have an opportunity to become more aware, become stronger, to come through it with new insight and learning and move forward. So um, I think that's all I need to say about that, about Julian. But I'm just like, I thank you, Jill, for bringing that book forward, because she is definitely someone I was aware of, but not nearly as deeply. And I am so excited to see how what she knows applies to us, but mainly that she's giving us back some things and power to be who we are more deeply.
So, Logithia, I wanted to add a little bit
Yes,
about
please.
her definition and expression of divinity.
Yes,
And
please.
as I was meditating and thinking about divinity and divine feminine, the thought came to me that we often think of divine as a noun,
Mm,
divine God, a noun. And it struck me, what if divinity is looked at as a verb?
mm,
And so it is also looked at as an adjective. Okay, so a divine, is a goddess or a theologian. Those people are considered a priest or a Julian. Even being somebody mentioned that she was called an anchoress. So she
yes,
is
yes.
divine because of this special calling. But what if divinity is an active verb in each of us? And what would that look like? And so I would like us to move forward in this conversation with the construct of verb, that the divine is a verb. And here's the definition. I love to do word studies, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we assume that everybody knows what divine is. We assume we know what feminine is. And so if we all can become to the same lingo, that gives us greater commonality to have honest and open conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So for this purpose, it is a verb. And get this, I love this. This lights me up. To perceive by intuition or insight. That is what divine is. Isn't that powerful? So if it is to perceive by intuition, the deep knowing inside ourselves, that is an active, ongoing, progressive um, act of love for ourselves. And Mary said that it's about love. So if we expand it out there to say that that divine is is an intuition, or it's an insight. It's in love that encompasses male and female, masculine and femininity. Then we begin to break down the walls, and move forward in grace and love, which I believe is what the world needs, especially coming out of a pandemic where we've been in seclusion. We have, like you've talked, we've been in fallow ground, right? Fallow ground. We have an opportunity to reemerge with a different paradigm. And I'm excited about that.
Beautiful. That's so, thank you so much for that. So what I'm hearing in what you say, Sharon, is the divine is not only divinity, as a verb, but it's something that is, it's an energy from within us.
Mhm.
It's already there. We don't have to go get it or have permission for it or whatever. It's like we are already divine. We are infused with divine, but we have had, you know, we've been talked out of it. We've shut parts of it down. And so our opportunity right now is to check back in with ourselves, and maybe we name again some of the aspects of the divine in action, of love in action as I see it, and look at where maybe there are those parts that you've missed, for whatever reason that you have not had access to them. But this is a possibility of a time when we can pull those back out again, and we can nurture each other in this way as well.
Mhm.
So things, and maybe I'll name a few, but Sharon, you might want to name another few if anybody else wants to open the mic and name some. But I think of words like nurture, we've already used that one, nature, balance, abundance, openness, softness. There can be confidence. There can, yeah. So anyone else want to pop in some words?
I would say, I would add insightful, kind, forthright in a gentle way, compassionate.
Creativity is one.
Mhm.
Authentic, Debbie is saying, thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
And I
So
would say magnetizing.
magnetizing. Ooh, nice. Yes.
A word that that Elizabeth Lesser uses is gallant. And I love that because it, we think that often in a male context, but she talks about what it means to be a gallant female, one who rises up and moves forward freely in courage and strength. And I really like that word. It's not attributed to women often, but I would like to claim that as a feminine word.
And Nicole says straightforward.
Mhm.
Also healing, because healing was traditionally your energy that you give and heal.
Thank you.
When I was first learning to be a mother, so those of that you don't know me, I own a nutrition and wellness center, and I am a mother of 9 children. And when I first got married, I didn't want to have any children because I didn't think I could do it. And but something got a hold of me, must have been love or something. But anyway, and this urge to have a baby came over me, and then I had the first, second, and then we kind of, tried not to have another one, but I guess we were more natural than we planned and ended up with the third one. And then once then we're just on a roll. We kept going. but I so desperately wanted to know how to be a good mother that I went to nature to learn that. And so I just studied about how animals took care of their young, how they launched their young. And it was out of the constructs of what I was being influenced at that time, which was the beginnings of occultic affiliation, the Quiverful movement. And it was all about, a lot of it was about suppression and dominance and obedience for children. Yet I had this longing in my heart, this something that didn't feel right to me about it. So I just started reading about animals and spending a lot of time outdoors with my children and letting them be children and observing, and it's when I first began to have a connect with nature in a whole new way and realize that that the divine was in the whisper of the trees. And it almost makes me start crying to think about it, but or the crash of a wave or the rush of a river, a mountain peak, a child throwing dirt in the air, coming home muddy and sloppy, and things that seem so natural and rhythmic that the world wanted to take me out of that. That's what I felt, and put me into a system that seemed unnatural to my very nature. And through the years, maybe lost essence of that. And so it's been a beautiful thing to re-engage and reintroduce my soul to the divine on beautiful, loving, natural flowing terms. And so it's natural, it's rhythmic. The divine is rhythmic. I love that.
Beautiful, thank you. So one of the things that those of you who know my work is calling, it's really revisioning birth that has been taken, it's been medicalized. And so to revision birth as a natural process where we know that the baby is conscious and is learning whether the world is a safe or not safe place to be. And I feel like that's one of the places we can begin to rebuild a world based on the divine, not just the divine feminine, but on the divine. And it has been my privilege this year to finally get to welcome twin grandbabies and to watch my daughter and her husband be the most amazing, welcoming, nurturing parents I could have imagined. The gift of that has been beyond measure. And so it has been inspiring to me to continue to share what I know to be my own work with more people, to give that vision, because I know those babies they've been welcomed through the entire process, but they are being introduced to nature too. And I feel like children in nature is another thing that we can offer. So we each have our own place in this. That's where I also feel like we've been sold a bill of goods that really kind of puts a wall between us and the divine, when we are told we can be anything we choose to be, or we have to fit in some box. But I really know that we each come in with a divine gift. And we can be nurturing each other, and we can see that gift in each other. Jill, you do this so fabulously, seeing the gifts and introducing people to who else they might be compatible with, who can nurture each other. I mean, for me, that is truly one of the gifts of community, is that we can be lifting each other up, and we all have a need to be seen. Sometimes we don't see our own gifts, but that's one of the things that we can be doing in community that is sometimes really difficult to do alone. So I kind of moved into our second question there, Sharon, about the opportunity for women in community. And I wanted to preface, like, actually I didn't say this at first, but we talked, Sharon, when you and I were talking during the week, we saw one of the themes that coming out was unity without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that one of the things that has happened on the planet, sometimes it helps to look at problems and then solutions. So one of the things we're facing is, this came up a little earlier, it's us against them all the time. It's like, it's you or me, but not the we. And so I feel like one of the opportunities we have is this idea that was also something in Julian's writings about unity.
Mm-hmm.
The unity of the divine, the unity of body, mind, spirit, like bringing things back together instead of trying to take everything apart, and not seeing it as, that there's always an other, but like, what is our commonality? What is our commonness as human beings? In addition to the uniqueness that we have, what do we have in common, and how can we continue to nurture each other in all those ways? So Sharon, do you want to say anything else about community? I mean, you're great. You have a family community as well as, the work that you do. So please say what you'd like to about the gift of community for women.
So as we transition out of the seclusion that we've been in, pandemic, and more into Earth-like, the conversation still as a society is us and them. So now the current battle is vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I'm just going to call it out, okay?
Yeah.
And now it's mask and unmask. It's we're still giving plenty of opportunity as if there's one way, and not that if there's balance, does it blend, and does it offer itself to the highest good? And in still divisive language. For example, there was an article in the Seattle Times about we're going to wear mask still, which is not whether I agree with or not, or this is not the debate, but it's the lingo. We're going to keep wearing masks because we cannot trust those who are not vaccinated, to be honest. Wow, that's a huge divisive statement. And we need to have communication that is from a safe place as community, holding space for, without the judgment and the preconceived idea that because someone makes a choice, they are this way or that way. And that takes a lot of compassion, a lot of confidence in our own intuition and decision-making process. And if we are insecure in any way and unstable, we cannot be in community authentically. And so it goes right back to doing that internal work, and then having honest conversations, whatever, there was a gentleman that came into my shop, and had some very strong views, and I'm not going to label him, okay? Conservative, liberal, whatever, but he began to speak language that was out of alignment. Even though I agreed with him in some ways, his language was out of alignment with my heart and how I want to be able to present myself in the world. And I called him out on it, and in a loving way. And I said, so and so, I really want to challenge you. You are so blessed. You've been given so much. How is it that you even have the energy to spend the breath to speak the way you're speaking? And he just shut down. He went, you are right. I could have said, you are one bigoted asshole. And I don't know what the fuck you are thinking. And I restrained myself. I thought it, but that's the opportunity we have to make a difference. But it can only be born when we go back and do the work, the active work of getting in touch with the divine feminine and how it portrays itself out in the world. So that's what I have to say about that.
Beautiful. So we have, many ways we are in community. We've probably missed a lot of the ways we're used to being in community, but we have other ways of being in community. So you may want to think about community as it is now, but community as you would envision it. Because what I know from both myself and clients I'm working with in coaching settings is like people are re-choosing a lot of things in their lives right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may be that as you go deep within and reconnect with the divine feminine within yourself, maybe the question is like something like, where am I called to be in community now? Not just what do I need, but how can I serve and where can I best do that? And so, so re-choosing what really is in alignment now for where you want to go forward and how you want to be in community. I love that example you just gave, Sharon, of how we can be, and that is from a loving stance. That was not a combative or defensive stance. You were being loving and you were being in tune and in alignment with your own heart and divine self. So that's one of the things I think that we can be inspired by and just be aware of, because we don't make changes unless we have awareness. So that's where I feel like this time now, as we're beginning to see a vision of coming out of pandemic, we know things are not going to be exactly the same, but we can begin to kind of mine the wisdom, the learning, like what can we choose? What are we leaving behind? What do we want to take forward? This has been an initiation. I mean, it's not a completed initiation yet, but in initiations, what happens is you've often faced death. We've all essentially faced death as a result of the risk of pandemic, right? As community, as planet, and as individuals. So we've been through some things already. So based on what you've been through and what you've learned, what's been hard, what has gotten you through, what are your strengths that you have now that you didn't have before? And what do you want to leave behind that will make you a different and stronger and more divine being as you move forward? So that's one of the opportunities, one of many, really. And I feel like community, one of the things that's happened here, we don't have a huge group gathering online, but we are still gathering. And one of the things that people have learned is this is actually still a way to stay connected. It's not the same, but it has energy.
Yeah,
And so I feel like that's offered an opportunity that not only allows us to stay connected, but it allows us to even broaden our connections. I've been able to facilitate some rather large mother blessing baby shower type events during the pandemic, where in some cases they would have thought, oh, we can't even do a baby shower because we can't gather. But we've had around 50 people in these gatherings, and they've been people from all over the world. So to be nurturing these babies and these mothers and welcoming them that way has been one of the gifts. And I believe some of that it's expanded our opportunities and our vision of what's possible in community.
And I want to add and re-emphasize what I said a little bit earlier. Part of that community is going to be welcoming what I'm going to call, and I believe it's tagged line by Elizabeth Lesser again, the sacred masculine, the divine feminine with the sacred masculine. And I believe they are out there. And I wrote down, as we learn to work alongside each other, it becomes a very holy place where we will mingle for a more balanced world, no longer dominated by patriarchy. And that's the world I envision, the community, not only of women, but it came to me this morning. I thought, that's what, because my tendency now, mind you, I come from a very patriarchal framework. So boy, that little rebel bitch in me just wants to sock it to them. But I am learning, what does it mean to move forward? And again, being in alignment with who I truly am. I'm not a male telling me how my spirituality needs to be, not having a male over my head that I have to get through to get to God. But then how can I learn to relate in a parallel, or in a balanced way? So I believe we're going to be challenged as women to really step out of, and Dr. Lugithia and I were talking about this, against being reactive and into being responsive to the opportunity before us.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I was thinking about is, as we were talking about birth, was we are in a transition, right? We're transitioning to a new world paradigm, a new world outlook, and we're still in transition. And we've been in birth, and women, and any of you that have had birth knows in transition, there's that place where I've been to almost 1,000 births, and I don't think there's been one woman that didn't say, I can't do this. I can't do this, or get away, you did this to me, don't you dare touch me again. But it's usually, I can't do this. And we're there as doulas, as birth workers, to say, you can, you're almost there. And I believe we're almost there. I believe we're moving, we're almost there, but we've got to resist the temptation to go back and remake the world in a masculine way. We've got to be compassionate. We've got to call upon the strength. My vision is Wonder Woman. She avoided every opportunity to not go into conflict, right? But when she had to, boy, you watched out. And so I said, this is Elizabeth Lesser again, and if you haven't read her book, Cassandra Speaks, it's so powerful. Women know something the world needs now. We have always known it. It's in our bones, but we have been silenced. We cannot fight our way back. However, because this is the same patriarchal combative way, we cannot fight our way. We need to love our way back. And love is not weak. Love is very strong. And, I've heard the definition that meekness is strength under control. And let us be forever meek, full of love. And underneath that gentle spirit is a lioness that has the greater good in mind.
Beautiful. So that's reminding me of what I often think about as, it's simplistic, but this is what is very present for me often. And that is, the choice seems to often be between love or fear. And so much of what is motivating right now, and it's natural as a response to something like a virus, but the fear stance is pervasive in so many arenas. The other option is the love. But what I know is love and fear cannot be happening simultaneously. There has to be a choice. And that's what we have now, is a choice. We can move forward in love. If we go with the fear, that's when we're going to fall back on the way it's been. So, and it does take a lot of energy to move to a new vision. It also takes having a vision to move to it. I don't even remember who said, without vision, people perish, but that just came to me. but vision is what we need. And Sharon, you named some things. So I feel like that might be something we could do right now. Is anyone who wants to open the mic and just say a couple words? What are words that either name in a few words or one word, a vision that we could have collectively to move toward?
So before we open the mic, we'll stop the recording. If there's the last two words, because I think this is a great open the mic time where we are at time. Is there any last word to give us before we stop the recording?
Well, I want to close with a Toni Morrison quote, and she said, "Dream before you think." I love that. And for me, that's what nature does, is being out in nature affords the opportunity to let the mind wander and dream. And one of the gifts of the pandemic is one thing we could do was people got in touch with nature like never before. It pisses me off that there's masks all over the trails, but that's another topic. But it seems like such a dichotomy, right? We've got people loving nature and littering like there's no tomorrow, but they'll learn. But the most important thing is they get to see God, even if they don't know they're seeing God. And yeah, isn't God a trickster? Yeah, I'll show myself real, whether you want to believe it or not. And so I'm so thankful for that. But as we move forward, let's just dream before we go out and start thinking our way out of the box.
Yeah, dream.
Lugita, any last words before Nicole turns off the recording?
Yes, I would say, again, love and fear can't happen simultaneously. So let's choose love. And it is also possible to hold both grief and joy at the same time. So you can't hold love and fear, but that's from Julian as well. You can hold both grief and joy. So don't deny that there has been, there are struggles that we've been through. There are huge challenges. So deal with that. Don't box it up and put it away. But you can hold and deal with grief and also simultaneously experience joy. And Julian coined the word enjoy. So I invite you to consider the possibility of whatever the vision is, live in joy.
Beautiful. Okay, Nicole, thank you everybody for coming to Illuminating.